Hi, everyone, and welcome. The program will begin in just a moment. Hi there, I'm Colleen Stovall, the Director of Programs and Events for the Miami Center for Architecture and Design and for AIA Miami. I'd like to welcome you all to this really amazing event. Before we begin, I would just like to ask that everyone keep themselves muted and keep their video off, which will give us more bandwidth and will just be easier for this presentation. Anyhow, today we're exploring the power of light as seen through the eyes of museum designers, and lighting technologists. And I'd like to introduce our panelists to you. Today we have Artemis Papadatou, the founder of Map Design Studios, and that was founded in 2017. And Artemis is originally from Athens, Greece. She received a master's degree in engineering from Democritus University of Thrace and a master's of science in advanced architectural design from Columbia University of New York. She's a practice licensed architect in Greece. Prior to founding MAP Studios, Artemis was a lead designer and is still currently a frequent collaborator with L'Observatoire International, where she worked on many prestigious projects, including the British Gallery's renovation at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the renovation and expansion of the Frick Collection, and many more. We also today have someone that many of you may know, Richard Miltner, who is the chief designer at the Wolfsonian Florida International University in Miami Beach. He holds a Master's of Fine Arts degree from Cranbrook Academy of Art in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. Richard is responsible for the overall design, planning, development, and implementation of the display of the museum's collection of over 180,000 objects of the period from 1850 to 1950, including prints, drawings, textiles, decorative arts. Oh, I'm not going to give the whole list. There's tons. His exhibition designs have received numerous awards, including Environmental Design Award from the American Institute of Graphic Arts and the Presidential Award for Achievement and Excellence from FIU. He has been honored with an American Academy in Rome affiliated fellowship. Veronica Caminos has worked in architecture, real estate development and the arts during the last 20 years. She has a master's degree in architecture and is registered in the states of Florida and New York. She has worked in many places, including Argentina, and working for renowned architect Robert A.M. Stern. She has worked on projects in Los Angeles and Bilbao, Spain. She recently relocated back to Miami in March of 2020 to start working for LUTRON Electronics, the architectural lighting and controls company. Her role is doing business development in South Florida, being LUTRON's liaison with architects, interior designers, and developers. So welcome to everyone. So before we get started, I would like to let Artemis talk to us a little bit about how lighting works and what we need to know, key aspects of lighting design, how lighting works in museums, and just a little bit, just not too much, but a little bit of the technical aspects of things that we will need to know to enjoy this presentation. So Artemis?
Yeah, of course. So I would love to share my screen because I've prepared a few slides that I think are going to be helpful for everybody to see while I describe some elements about how to approach lighting for art and museums. So as a lighting designer, when you get invited to be a member of a team to design the lighting for a museum, there's two aspects that take place. One is what is the general design approach for the museum itself and the art is going to house. And then the other aspect is all the technical aspects that goes into executing that, the lighting to perform and for the art to look great. So for the general design approach, the idea is that we create a human experience within the museum space and create a sequence of visual and spatial experiences and connections. So the idea is that when a visitor comes into the space, there's a feeling that gets evoked. That the visitor feels as a part of the era where the art was designed, and also that there is a pace that gets created through architecture and lighting that takes the visitor from one space to the next and creates a sense of elevation and contemplation at the same time. A lot of museums also have a lot of daylight, so the successful combination of daylight and electrical light is very important. And the last item is to discuss about not just about lighting, but about the shadows and how to the idea is to create a soft ambient illumination, but also create some moments of shadows and how the two work together to create moments within the design of the space. Technical aspects are color temperature, very important for museum lighting is conservation, the light levels and minimal exposure to some art pieces that are very sensitive. And also how we can create with sustainability lighting in museums. Museums are buildings that last for a really long time, and it's very important that we provide to the museums lighting that they can purchase more of in the future, they can renovate, they can replace without it being extremely costly. So in order to kind of like explain a little bit more in more detail all the things that I've just mentioned, I've prepared a few slides through past projects that I've worked on, such as the Frick collection and the British Galleries at the Metropolitan Museum, as Colleen mentioned earlier, that I think would be helpful to visualize some of these aspects. So, for example, at the Frick collection it started as an old mansion, and then there were several expansions done to it. One of the major and most important spaces in the museum is this big atrium that has a giant skylight that has a lot of daylight. So the idea when we were designing this museum is how to merge spaces that are very darkly lit. For example, in the mansion space, the courtyard, which is all day lit, and then the new expansion, which is kind of going to be more new and contemporary. So media that we used to convey different aspects of that was during the design process was to create renderings and to discuss with the curators, with the museum team, with the architects about how the experience is going to be different between daytime, nighttime, between the old building and the new building, and daylight and electrical light. Another item that is very important is the color temperature of light. So this is a simple graph that shows where we want to be in terms of illumination of artwork within the spectrum of daylight. So usually we want to be static on the artwork around 3000 Kelvin, but it always depends on the artwork itself. But the museum space illumination around the piece of art can vary and become warmer and cooler as the day changes from daytime to evening. So it can be a transformative experience for people who visit the museum between different times of the day. Another very important thing to note is the light levels that are required on pieces of art. So uh, everybody has been to a museum. There's mixed media within the same gallery space. You can have a beautiful painting, or you can have a sculpture, you can have a beautiful sculpture. All of these, because of the different materiality they're made from, have different requirements in terms of the light levels. So for sensitive collections, we're looking at 5-foot candles. For less sensitive, like paintings, wood, leather, we're looking at 20-foot candles. And then the least sensitive, like metals and ceramics, stones and glass, we're looking at 30-foot candles. So you see there is a big variation of allowable foot candles within on the piece of art that can all be displayed within the same gallery space. Getting inspired by artists, big artists from the past, I wanted to display this as a way to explain the difference between ambient and accent light. When we talk about accent light, we talk about a beam of light that that highlights a piece of art. It creates a more contrast, it creates a little bit more drama, and it also can create shadows that can be very important in the way that one sees the art. Ambient lighting is more about the diffuse light that enters in the space. We can talk about ambient light that we can create through electrical light, and also daylight is part of that. These are different processes that I think were very interesting to show when designing a museum. This is from the example of the British galleries. So we use different media during the design process, such as physical mock-ups. We use light level calculations to understand what the light levels we will be getting are going to be during a 3D simulation. And then these are photographs from the British galleries. And the reason why I pulled these photographs together is to exactly show this mixed media collection within the same gallery. So for example, here you have tapestries, which allowable foot candle levels are 5-foot candles. And then you have metals, which we're looking at 30 or 30 plus foot candles. So the difference between the light levels within the same space on different pieces of art creates different moments, creates focal points, creates points of interest that the visitor, when enters in the gallery, can stand and contemplate within this big tapestries, or stay here and look at the various details within those beautiful pieces of art. Another thing that is important for this gallery space that we designed was that this is a 17th century gallery. So the concept was to evoke a sense of darkness. 17th century, there was no electrical light at the time. So part of the curatorial discussion with the curators and the design team of the museum was to evoke the atmosphere of how those pieces were perceived in 17th century when they were built. So that speaks to the experience that a visitor has when circulating in a space and when they see an exhibition. Different aspects of the same space. So you see these big tapestries together with the light and shadow that we can create here in the center of the space. And then moving on to 18th century, 18th century light was discovered. The idea was that we get a more elevated experience as we circumambulate within the gallery. So we're looking for something brighter. Another thing that takes place when designing a museum is mock-ups, physical mock-ups. So we go in the space and we test the lighting. We make sure that everybody from the conservation team, from the curatorial team, from the architecture team, the designers, everybody gets to experience and see the light that is meant to be implemented before it gets installed at the time of construction. And then a lot of changes happen with these mock-ups that are very valuable throughout the design process. So these are some final images of this space where you see there's a sense of elevation, the space is brighter, there is a sense of focal points within the space. The walls are softer, the center elements are brighter. So there is a nice pace that is created when somebody goes in and sees and experiences the art within these galleries. So another aspect here that this final slide wants to show is how we use the overhead lighting in the museum, as we saw before, but we also use integral lighting in the museum, within the display cases, to create light and shadow elements, and kind of like really, the light really helps grace, for example, where you see the face of this sculpture, really helps to identify all the elements on its face and all the different details on the sculpture itself. So these were a few slides that I wanted to share with you, just to show you, to show you an idea of what the process is when designing lighting for a museum space, for a gallery space, and how different elements come to play for them to all create a beautiful experience for the visitors.
That's fascinating. So I'd like to go to Richard, and we're talking about your space at the Wolfsonian and the exhibit you have, and you just opened up today, right? Is today the first day, or was it yesterday?
We opened up yesterday. Slow opening to see how things go, but we're open Thursday through Sunday.
That's great. Well, I want to talk. I can't. The Zoom background you have is pretty amazing too. I just want to point that out to everyone. It's so great. I want to know how the three of you got together, and did you have like particular challenges in the space you were working in that you needed specific tools from Veronica and design from Artemis, or how did you guys come together with this project?
Well, I think like with most people today, it's unusual how COVID has affected even who we are introduced to or how things come about. And again, COVID had a big reason for us why this happened, because when we closed the building in March, we knew right away that the world was going to be different when we reopened, especially because of our historic building. And I think that knowing that the circulation patterns were already confined before, and we already had exhibitions that we densely pack, and it's almost a residential feel, we knew right away there was going to be a problem. Plus we had some upcoming projects about to occur within the building for construction, revamped elevator, some redistribution of floor purposes, that kind of thing in the original building. So it gave us the opportunity to look at what we could do when we reopened, which was yesterday, on the first floor, so that we could contain it to some kind of an experience where we could acknowledge that we need to be available for the public on a smaller scale, but also we wanted to address some issues that were happening in the contemporary world. So the curators came up with 4 small installation ideas that had to do with solidarity, and we decided to try to figure out how to put it in our circulation plan on the first floor, make it very simple and free to the public. So at the same time that was happening, we got this call from LUTRON, very serendipitously, asking us if we'd like to be a beta site for new lighting. Of course, I was all over it because being there for so long, I had gone from incandescent to halogen to LED, and fighting with our system, trying to keep up and doing the best we could. But
wait, I'm going to interrupt you right there. So doing lighting back then, like, last Thursday or whenever, what did your lights kind of consist of? I've heard words like barn doors and gels and.
Well, we had this, sort of typical track lightings. I mean, if you want to go to the first image.
Yeah, sure.
I think, we had the typical lighting, but this gave us an opportunity to really leap into the 21st century, because what was happening is, like I said, we'd gone through all the bulb changes over the decades trying to keep up, but we certainly did not have the control and of the new type of smart bulbs that are utilized now. So this was our chance. And what I really thought was completely a great idea was utilizing this first floor to test out, not only because we were transforming our very sort of quiet auditorium into exhibition space, but to really bring to life these public spaces on the first floor. So between the two, it was really showing the flexibility of what was possible. And I think that was what I was really interested in, was we weren't particularly contained to trying to light artwork in the gallery. We were talking about our architectural interiors and what we could do within the spaces for public events and those types of things. If you want to switch to the next one, yeah. So as you can see, I think some of you know that we do engage with other artists and designers that augment our exhibition program. So we have worked with them in the past, and we've done lighting, but you can imagine, you know, the Friday before the afternoon that the thing's opening, we were playing with gels and trying to do the best we could with our system to try to bring these things to life. And, you know, sometimes we would say, oh, wow, that doesn't look so bad, but boy, I knew what it took to get there. But, you know, there was a lot of reasons why we were very happy, again, for this lighting to be able to take some of the load of being able to manipulate it so well. You know, we have performers in the fountain that we'd have to transform the space for. And again, trying to deal with our lighting was fine, but it was not an easy chore, especially when you've got an opening about to happen upstairs. And I think you all have seen, you know, our very modest auditorium, and this was a space we were hoping to transform into at least a gallery space where we could include a couple of these ideas that the curators are working with to get the first floor accessible to the public. So going to the next image, this is what that same space, again, we broke through the wall to try to make it, at least the rooms fit the circulation plan for the COVID issues, and to try to space things out. And again, very fortunate to have the lighting come in and at the same time. So we had to replace the track, and the fixtures arrived, and then they were programmed and set up, and we can now begin that process of individual control on the fixture, which was the first time we've been able to do this without fly screen and all kinds of other sort of duct tape solutions to creating lighting schemes.
So you're talking about flexibility and being able to reprogram the lights.
Correct.
Not from a ladder.
Like, for instance, before we would go in, as Artemis was mentioning about foot candles, in this particular room, everything's paper or textile. So, you know, we're trying to keep to that 5-foot candle meter reading. And before, we'd have to stuff the fixture with fly screen to try to cut back on the not only the lumens coming up, but the foot candle measurements would be more corrected. So it was really pretty antiquated. With this system, you can go in and control each bulb so that it doesn't happen in this particular gallery, but you could go in and have a stone sculpture right next to paper and start to control it by fixture, which, you know, was much more difficult in the past. So that's the kind of thing that really was a benefit.
For novices, how do you measure foot candle of light? How does one do that? How do you determine it?
Through a meter that's got an oculus on it, and you hold it perpendicular at the correct angle to the surface of the artwork you're lighting, and it gives you an immediate reading out of where you're landing on the scale. So, you know, what appears to the eye is one thing, and then what's on that scale is really what's required, because especially a lending institution is very concerned about the overall exposure of light, how long a time it's exposed, and at what foot candle. And we track all this stuff in our database. So if a poster's out, it's recorded that it was on display for, say, 3 months, and then at some point we rest it or don't lend it out, because we realize it can only take so much, especially the paper and the textiles.
So it's light times time?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Exactly. And I'm sure Artemis could really get into it with the technical parts. And, you know, this is the beauty of being able to work with Artemis and Veronica was, you know, like I know all the buzzwords and I try to, you know, do the best I can, but to really work with them to understand it in a much more technological, you know, purposeful way, and then to pair it with this flexibility of the fixture, it's really an incredible tool now that'll make, you know, my life easier. The conservators will be happy, the curators will be happy, the event people will be super happy.
And the art itself will be happy
Yeah,
because your
exactly.
control is much more fine-tuned, right?
Yeah. So this is an example of the this, you know, certainly this is not the Frick space. This is our Miami Beach space, but we do have a little bit of a similar situation here with the theater facade and the long view on the east wall with a skylight above, and then the photographer standing in front of a glass window to the front of the building. So that would be the west side. So we do have natural light coming in from two directions. And we have this architectural interior. So it was really interesting to me to be able to play with this idea of manipulating light throughout the day to either highlight, like we could even highlight the beautiful floor, which we've never been able to do before, to pull out its colors. And so, because we get a lot of pedestrians going down Washington Avenue in the evening, so they're able to enjoy this view in a much more controlled way, which was kind of fun. You know, we haven't been able to do that before. And again, this space you see here is an example of why I'm saying the event people are going to be so happy, because for us before, they would come downstairs and say, you know, the opening's at 6, you know, and we're trying to finish upstairs the exhibition, and they're wanting to do some gelling downstairs, and we would come down with our ladders and start. And, you know, as you know, that's not an easy thing to just sort of plan and do and make sure it works right. So to do this system with these uplights that were installed, they have the complete, and Veronica will explain this more thoroughly, they have the complete control to be able to, with an app on your phone, to just go in and start manipulating these things and create atmospheres that, scenes that we can use that are either preset or we can customize them by event. So that's really fantastic. Again, showing what can happen to an interior with the flick of a button and change the whole room scene, and the ability to not only correct it to artwork if you're really, really trying to work with the curators to have a specific light on artwork to show it in its best, or to manipulate it for events like this event. The middle slide would be for sort of a cocktail event where you just want to, you know, be very aware of skin tones at a party or whatever event people worry about. And then, you know, and then to be able to go to a control party atmosphere where you can manipulate these scenes in a much more dramatic way. So that's sort of what for us was an incredible thing, was this flexibility and control, not only for museum lighting, but for these public spaces to be able to use them to their fullest for all of our activities, whether it be, you know, lecture or performances, parties, across the board. And then even for that view from outside during the night can be so much fun for the passerby, where we can do time clocking and really create these things and let it go. So that was really the sort of the benefits that I saw within our small space.
So do you think, Richard, that this is something, so you just have this on the first floor of the museum so far? Right. Do you think that's something you may do throughout, or? I
mean, as we move forward, this is the future. So not only, obviously it's much more, for me, it's like what Artemis was showing in the British galleries. That control is something we haven't achieved yet, because we don't have multiple gallery rooms, and we haven't had the time to work with it long enough. Mm-hmm. But eventually that attributes that it presents for just the object care and presentation is one thing. And then in this public space is kind of a different thing. So I'm really looking forward to working with it in a full-blown exhibition design in our more permanent and temporary changing spaces.
Well, that's great. Well, Veronica, we've been talking about these fixtures, and I know they come from your company. So for a museum, besides addressing, flexibility for parties and, whatever, not having to get up on a ladder, you were showing us some amazing things about how, and I don't know when you want to get into it, but there's something I want to make sure we address, is you were showing us pictures of how lighting can bring out maybe the artist's original intent in the artwork. How is that done through fixtures?
Yeah, well, for museums, I think our system, just a little backstory, LUTRON has a very long-standing relationship with the Wolfsonian. And I think we introduced a new lighting control system this year. We reached out to them because between this new lighting control system and then a state-of-the-art light we acquired a couple of years ago, we felt we could give the museum a whole new set of tools, which not only can help you render artwork in terms of aesthetics, in terms of, what color temperature light do you want on each piece? What intensity do you want on each piece? How many foot candles do you want on a piece in terms of conservation? What's too little, what's too much? This light system could also help them in terms of maintenance issues. Museums tend to switch out lamps a lot. The LED technology we provided the museum with is the state-of-the-art LED lamp that has a 10-year life, but if you should happen to have to switch out lamps, they're auto-calibrating so that they correct between each other, so they all have the exact same calibration of light temperature, the same for intensity. And then on top of it, I think they're also state-of-the-art because they're very, you have a very pristine gamma of white. A lot of older LED lamps had kind of fragmentation of light. And as the technology develops, the light beams are becoming more uniform and more crisp without any color shift or color breakout. So I think that was the set of tools that kind of prompted the museum to say, hey, to reach out to the museum and say, hey, can we try out this system and this lamp inside your space? So if you don't mind me sharing.
No, go ahead.
I'll just go down real quick where we left off. Just in general, the lighting installation, as Richard mentioned, kind of arose from COVID. So we limited this beta installation to the ground floor, which was, per the city and per FIU, where the public would be allowed to go and where the only exhibition would be open. So that required kind of retrofitting Richard's former auditorium and classroom, and then thinking about how the lighting would accommodate to have artwork hung there. And then also there were key areas which Richard had expressed to us were very important and iconic to the university, such as, the fountain area here, where there's also natural lighting concerns, the ramp where there's a large engine displayed there. So this is just a general idea of where we did this installation. And then, some progress shots showing, the arduous work that Richard and his staff had to go through to kind of do this retrofit on the fly. But the great thing about this installation is that once COVID is over and once the museum maybe takes the auditorium space back to its original use, the light system is such that the control system is so flexible, and each light fixture in there is an individually addressable light fixture. He can go back and basically zone the light system as he wants, zone the fixtures as he wants. It's the ultimate flexibility in terms of you can be changing the use of a room and immediately without rewiring and basically almost without getting up on a ladder, you can be adapting the light system to the new use.
What is in two things? What is individually addressing? I mean, I'm kind of guessing I know what it means, but what exactly?
There are different lighting protocols. The state of the system that we installed in the Wolfsonian has individually addressable fixtures. It's a digital lighting load where each fixture has a driver inside the lamp, and that driver communicates with other components of a system. And basically you can program each fixture on a certain number of factors. And that really depends on the fixture you installed. The fixture we installed, these lamp fixtures called Ketra, you can program not only the white color temperature, which is called CCT, correlated color temperature. The fixtures that Richard has can go from 1400 Kelvin to 10,000 Kelvin. You can also program colored light if you want. You can program how intense you want the light to be. You can program dimming that has a warmer temperature to it. You can even have little tricks called vibrancy, which I'll touch on, but it really changes how you perceive the art. So Richard and I started playing around with some of the works he has to see, you know, different art, paintings, sculptures, whatever the piece may be, kind of look very different under different CCT white temperature. So here, this gives you an idea. Most museums will light between 2800 and 3000 Kelvin, but you know, some newer contemporary galleries are lighting in colder, bluer tones above 3000 Kelvin. And so you can see just from these photos how that changes your perception, especially of color. Of course, and then there's other tricks that the Ketra lamps that Richard has installed in have. One of them is called, one of them is called vibrancy. And you can show a piece under what's called high CRI light, which is your optimal light for color rendering. And that architects will look on a cut sheet for a light fixture and it'll tell them what the color rendering index for that fixture is. So normally for a museum, you definitely want anything be above 90 and really into the 94s and above range. So if you were showing the piece at 3000 Kelvin high CRI light, this is what you would get. The lamps that Richard has can also, at 3000 Kelvin, can remix even further the light, kind of lowering the color rendering, but allowing you to play with how you perceive certain colors, basically oranges, reds, and yellows. So you can even kind of play with how you perceive individual colors.
Can I interrupt you, go back for just a minute, and I'm going to ask Artemis a quick question. So as a designer, how do you determine which, because those are very different looking looks for the same painting. How do you determine, what are the criteria for determining what look you're going to go with the lighting?
Well, I don't think this is a question for the designer necessarily as much as the curators and the conservators. Ideally, you know, when we talk about lighting an art piece, there's different things like how the creator of the art piece saw it and how you kind of like try to create the atmosphere and the illumination of how the piece was originally, when the piece was originally built. So, you know, objectively you can say, I like this better than the other, but ultimately it's more of a conservation and curatorial approach to what the art piece needs to look like.
Yeah, and it's generally, Colleen, I mean, a lot of times it's considered, you know, the artist's intent, where the artist painted. If he was an au plein air artist, you know, you might want a light with slightly colder light because the art was produced under natural light conditions. You know, there's historical lighting concerns, and there's also the artist's intent. This is another piece that Richard and I played with, which again highlights how you change the perception of color by just changing not only the color temperature, but you can also dim the light on it. And then we also tried it on the theater facade that you see in the back of the entry lobby. And again, especially metals change drastically depending on the white spectrum light that you're shining on. So it gives you a great flexibility. Richard had this particular painting, which was always kind of an Achilles heel for him, because it was a painting that he intended to put in this show, and it's a painting that has a dark palette and has always been very difficult for him to light. When he was setting up the exhibit in the auditorium, we started playing around with the new light fixtures and seeing how that could help him with this problem of lighting this particular piece. And I thought it was interesting to show it to you, to show you all how it changes. This is the original piece as Richard had shown it. He had actually put a work light in front of it to try to better the rendering of the colors, because it was very hard to perceive the colors. And so I'm just going to go through. This is what happened with the original lighting, and a worker's lamp placed at 3 or 4 feet in front of it, so that you can see all the hidden colors that you were missing with the original lighting. When we put in the new light fixtures, we really got to play a lot with this piece. We ended up putting 3 lamps on it, and you can see the difference in the colors and the parts of the paintings that weren't actually visible before with the original lighting he had. And it's a great piece to show how this individually addressable lamps can change how you perceive one piece of art. So I'm just going to go through quickly and show the same piece at 4,000 kelvins, then at 3,200 Kelvin, then dimming it at that same temperature, then dialing that temperature down to maybe a very warm 2,600 Kelvin, 2,200 Kelvin, which would be what you would see this painting like if you were in candlelight. This is high color rendering, 3,000 CRI. So this is your optimal color rendering. This is how you would see the piece if you were to take it outside in natural daylight, or if you were to shine it under an incandescent light. And then you can play around with vibrancy, and you see how the same piece just changes drastically. Even the frame color changes because you're playing with the technology of the lamp. The lamps actually have 4 different LED chips. And so you can manipulate those chips to not only change color temperature, but actually peak certain spectrums of wavelengths. And just to show you how architecturally that affects spaces, not just the art, this is the ramp that I mentioned. Richard has this beautiful machine in the middle, the engine. And this is the exhibition daytime standard setting he has with the new lights. The lights you can see are some down lights that are mounted on tracks, and then there's some indirect linears that we mounted. So this is your daylight standard that he programmed into the system, 3,200 Kelvin to 4,000 Kelvin lights. Each light has a slightly different temperature. And this is just manipulating the system, showing you how the same lamp and the same light fixtures can show a drastically different color spectrum of white. So in the back you have 5,500 kelvins, and we start getting warmer as we get closer to us. So we have 4,000 in the middle, then 3,000 next, and then the warmest is 2,200 Kelvin. And you can do any color light, colored light with this fixture. So you have a full gamut of 16 million colors that are saturated or pastel colors. Again, this is the same light fixture producing all these different colors. And the flexibility is just, it's great for events, it's great for the art, it's very high color rendering light, it's got very low damaging rays. And the full flexibility, to get a little bit into more the nitty gritty of the fixtures, Richard got an array of different beam angles, and he got some that are 90-degree angle lamps. He got some 60 degrees, some 40 degrees, some 25 degrees. With that, you can start layering light. And with those layers, you really start making the space come alive. It's not just layering of the color temperatures, the CCT, or the intensity, but also manipulating the beams will also help you create these very interesting layered looks. Right here on the right, you see the different lamps that have the different beam angles. And then you see below, that's the full white spectrum that the light fixtures Richard Receive have. So from the very left of that far end, that's a 1400 Kelvin white light, and the very right, that's a 10,000 Kelvin white light. And finally, what's great for Richard is that when he changes out this exhibition or, takes the space back to an auditorium use, he no longer has to use the gels and, the barn doors and get up, and his assistant Billy getting up 5 times for the same fixture. He can just use an app or these little handheld remote controls, or if he should want, he can install some keypads in the space, and with the touch of a button or just scrolling on his iPad or his iPhone, he adapts the space in seconds. So while new technology still can't really make one lamp that has the full beam spread gamut or that moves across the rail by itself, I'm sure that's coming, but we've come a pretty far way. And I think for museums, these tools would make just lighting so much easier, especially for these spaces that are switching out their exhibits every 3 to 4 months. Commercial art galleries as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that, Veronica. What are some other utilizations for this system, these lights? Is it only museums and gallery kind of things, or where else can they go?
Galleries have really latched onto this because of this flexibility that you have, and you have per light fixture, per art piece, you can have 3 lamps, and each lamp has a different color temperature and a different intensity. So you can really, it's powerful. But I mean, we've installed it in hospitals that are concerned with circadian lighting. We've talked about, we were talking earlier about senior living facilities where circadian lighting has become a major issue in treating patients. We've installed it in children's hospitals for using the colored light as kind of distractions while the young children are being, having medical tests done. It's great for retail, where you can be highlighting, say, in a Louis Vuitton store, each purse individually, and each one has their color temperature and intensity, and when you swap out the merchandise, you can actually be changing the lamps out in your iPhone. And even in changing rooms, we installed it in a Nike store in New York, where they had done some research where people were returning clothes based primarily on the clothes looking different when they took it home under different lighting. And so they provided 3 or 4 different lighting scenes within the changing room so that you could see how your outfit would look in the morning, at noon, and at night, and see really if you were happy with the rendering of the colors. So it's very, very flexible.
Wow, that's really cool. So if anyone listening has any questions for anyone on the panel, please put them in the chat feature, and we will get to them in just a moment. So while we're waiting for questions, I don't see any right now. I guess we can ask each, I'm going to ask each of you just for some kind of big picture final thoughts or anything you want to share with the group. And Richard, I'm going to start with you.
I think the takeaway for me was it seemed to be perfect for us, because knowing that, everybody's got budget issues and how much it takes to do everything in a museum with a limited staff, that lighting was shockingly one of our bigger problems, because we had to go through every day with our cart and change out bulbs, and they got better as the LEDs came in, but you'd be shocked how many bulbs have to be changed a day, which is labor. And then obviously the idea of how happy the curators and the conservators are with the complete control, because no longer are we guessing at anything. We have such control now that you could probably record things so that you remember what you've done, so that you could really track things and monitor them in a much easier way. The ease of it makes it much more applicable to really being on top of these things. And third and not least, I'll mention my event people again, because they, of course, really the dramatic effects of interior change of light for those types of things is so much easier than the past, that it, again, for a small nonprofit, these are really fantastic to be able to do these reallys. Almost looks like you had professionals come in and spend hours and hours and hours, and cost a lot of money, and you really just on your phone. So, just the overall ease.
Well, we have a question here from Bill somebody, and he says, I know this is impossible to answer due to the size of the project, but what are some examples of how much lighting projects like this might cost somebody?
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah. I mean, is it very expensive, more than it used to be, less than it used to be?
I think I can only speak to our technology, and with a new lighting system, this new lighting system, it makes this kind of more affordable than it used to be, especially for small to medium projects. And that's really the sweet point for this technology, this control system particularly, which is called Athena. A small Athena installation where you might want to retrofit existing light fixtures with, say, 15, 20 lamps, just the lamps, not a fixture, because just lamps. You don't have to necessarily buy light fixtures. You'd have to install a processor, which is kind of the brains of the system, have some programming. That a small installation might start at $6,000, $7,000. And then it really depends on, are you going to be installing fixtures or just lamps? Are you going to be incorporating third-party lamp fixtures? Something I didn't mention, but you can incorporate basically any third-party lighting into this control system. The Ketra one is the one that's going to give you the full range of controls, but you can incorporate any lighting load into the system. And so it just really depends on the complexity, but you would start with that.
Around 6,000.
And and the great thing about it is that it gives you flexibility, like Richard was saying, to just pre-program scenes. And so your space user just comes in, say your space manager just comes in and presses daytime or open. Right. And with Richard, we programmed most of the first floor is just programmed on time clock automatic events. So he doesn't even have to get the app out, nothing. It just happens.
Wow. Let's see. We have another question here from Sophia Politzer. Hi, everyone. Thanks for doing this. Veronica, do you see the system that you were describing, Ketra, Athena, ? As useful for high-end residential interiors where art is more fixed and won't be rotating exhibits? Or would it be more cost-effective to select static CCT per art piece?
I personally think static lighting, especially for art, is the past. I mean, it's just the past. It's and for residential, actually, we have a different control system, but we have Ketra fixtures for residential, and residential has latched onto this much faster than commercial. Like in high-end residential, this has really taken off. People have very large art collections in their home and even in offices. So for residential, we have a different control system called HomeWorks, but the Ketra fixtures have essentially the same flexibility. There's just a separate model numbers for the residential control system. But it's been super successful in residential.
Wow. Well, Artemis, do you have any final thoughts or parting words for us?
For me, working in the industry for all these years and seeing this new technology come alive over time, it's just amazing. And I think it just makes our life easier when, you know, we design a space or when we go and commission the space to have all these tools to work with and create the beautiful design that we put forward at the beginning of the conception, design conception. I think one of the challenges to educate clients around new technology, you know, people are familiar with what they've seen before. So I think it's very important to explain this well, to have experience centers like LUTRON has set up, for example, and to actually understand, because lighting is so immaterial, people can't really understand it until they see it, right? So it's very important to do that for ourselves as designers and for the clients and the teams that we work with. So I'm very excited to work with new technology.
And what about you, Veronica? Any?
Well, I mean, I chime in with Artemis. I think since lighting is so immaterial, I would encourage and invite anyone that's seeing this to reach out to Richard or myself. I would invite you to come. I would love to host some tours so that you can actually play with the technology yourself, put some remote controls in your hand so you can actually see how it works. And really see how simple the installation is, because it's basically low voltage wiring into Ethernet wiring. It's very simple to install, but I really do think seeing is believing. So anyone that would like more information, just reach out to me. And if you'd like to tour the Wolfsonian, I think it really is the way to understand the technology.
Oh, that's amazing. So what I'm going to do, everyone, is I will get the information for Veronica and Richard and Artemis, and we will have a short survey that you all will be receiving probably this afternoon, just about how you heard about this event and our events and ideas if you have for more talks. And I'll put their contact information in there. And also the link to a recording of this session. So if you want to share that with anyone, you're more than welcome to. And I wanted to thank everybody so much for giving of their time, Richard and Artemis and Veronica. This has been absolutely fascinating to me, and kind of a revelation to see what the new technology can do in art exhibitions, especially with sensitive material like Richard's material, which, as he was saying, is mostly paper, which is the most delicate of all artifacts. So thank you everyone for joining us. And we have another event in this series coming up on Monday. If anyone wants to join, I'm going to put up the card right now. Let's see, hold on. And it's in the Power of Light series, and it's about illuminating a city, and it's about illuminate Coral Gables, and they're using light to create art on buildings and in different spaces all over Coral Gables. So that should be pretty fascinating, but we're going to talk about that with the curator of the event and with the founders of the event. So that will be happening Monday evening at 6 p.m. if anyone wants to join us. And again, Richard, Artemis, and Veronica, thank you so much for joining us. And to all of you, thanks and have a great day. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.